Supportables week 11 is done and dusted, and it was a pretty good one. Lots of high scores, lots of green on our board, not a lot of red, and actually the reds kind of faced off against each other, so I guess that makes sense. Either way, I think we definitely know with NFL implications that they're starting to get on a playoff run, but we are openly in our last couple weeks of the playoffs. Every matchup's going to matter, so let's get right to the NFL and then jump to see how we all did in week 11. For the most part, week 11 was kind of fun. Scores were high for the most part, and while you can't win them all, in this particular case, I think we're going to see more green and over-predicted Yahoo teams than under. Even if we actually go to the league as a whole, it's like a bit too perfect right now. Everything kind of just is as it's supposed to be, I guess. Our playoff teams in each of the AFC and NFC, there's 7 teams that are above 500 in each conference. There's our playoff teams right there. We look at even the close and upset games. I mean, I'm sure if you're a Bears fan, you're just getting tired of these heartbreaking losses. No shots fired on this one, but the Packers kind of always beat the Bears, and they did, even though it was a blocked field goal that did it. The Bills upset the Chiefs, or not really an upset. They actually were favored, but that's because even though the Chiefs were undefeated, and now we don't have an undefeated team, the Bills kind of always beat the Chiefs in the regular season. So not really super newsworthy, even though it was a pretty entertaining game. NFC North was pretty much as it is, a super defensive slog. Or we look at a team like the Cleveland Browns, who unfortunately have bumped into the Saints during a 2-game winning streak after they get a new coach and he clogs the toilet. Suddenly they're unbeatable. The Browns actually did throw for a lot of yards, even though their best offensive player didn't really get off the go, but Taysom Hill occasionally is going to Taysom Hill, and that's just kind of what we expect. Turns out he was the Tim Tebow everyone actually wanted all along, but once or twice a year he has a game that just wins fantasy teams and wins actual games. So again, kind of too perfect. Even some of the teams we love to kick when they're down. I mean, the Jets did what the Jets do, and under the Aaron Rodgers regime, they lose because that's just what they do. It was a close one, and they played okay, but they lost. And then they fired a coach for Rodgers, but not for Rodgers, but for Rodgers, because that's what they do. Dallas is either really, really good or funny when they're bad. And right now, Jerry Jones can't admit that he's blinding his own players and then almost, and I say this because it didn't happen, almost slicing fans in half ghost ship style because we have things falling from the ceilings. And he's just kind of like, yeah, that's football. Because, yeah, it's Jerry Jones. And it's kind of just too perfect right now. Even we had our best team, arguably, I think you got to admit, the Lions are right now probably the best team in the league, and they just put like high school stats up on the worst team, or one of them, in Jacksonville. I mean, we're talking like when you're good at Madden, but you still play in beginner mode kind of stats. Goff had almost as many touchdowns this week as he had interceptions last week, so that's saying something. So I'm not really sure what to expect from here. Is this just what we get for the next couple weeks as we head into our fantasy playoffs, that everything just is as it should be? I don't think it can be. We got 6 teams on the bye. It's a huge bye week. It's going to have massive implications for our season, even though the NFL knows it's going to be fantasy season. They just don't seem to care. Which, again, that was about right, but I don't know. I'm waiting for something crazy to happen in week 12. I don't know if it's just going to be like normal kind of crazy, some Rojo Caliente crazy, or like Rodgers is going to retire, because let's be honest, I don't know any team that now would want to hire him when you're going to lose and you're going to lose your staff. But he probably, if we're going to go off the wall crazy, wouldn't that be he quits, joins a fake doctor and a media personality and running a country? I mean, that's in the cards. We are in that zone, unfortunately. Anyway, we'll see how it goes, because obviously we're shifting our focus here. NFL is great, and obviously what we're going for, but come on. We're almost in the playoff stretch here, and fantasy sports outweighs it. So let's get right to the scores. Jules, Lara, in real life, you're great, you're lovely. But in fantasy, enough. Shut up. We get it. You're the 1 seed. You're taking it home. This was the biggest spike the ball week we ever could have had. And not a spike the ball too well reference. I mean, you kind of dominated. Now, I will say, in the rest of this recording, or in breaking down of this week's scores, there's the Taysom Hill issue. He qualifies for 2 positions. So while he was both the quarterback one and the tight end one, I'm going to be counting him as tight end But know that every quarterback I say then, slide them one down, because technically he was the number one. So with that being said, this was supposed to be a Monday night potential miracle. And actually, Jules, Lara, you were 71% chance, but Randy had a shot. She was up 7.2. She had Houston's kicker. There was a chance, but you had Mixon and Houston's defense. So what happened on the Monday night? Well, Mixon became our running back one, and Houston was our defense one. And you think that's enough, right? That's enough points. No, you also had St. Brown, who had already been the wide receiver one on the week, and Goff, who is now technically under these new kind of scoring rules, the quarterback one. So all that leaves is a kicker, which you gave to the other team, and the tight end, and the number one quarterback, as I mentioned, who was on your freaking bench. I mean, knock it off. We get it. You spiked the ball. Even Bo Nix, great. He was the number 3. So technically, if you include Hill and you had 4 quarterbacks, you had 3 of the top 4 this week. So thank you, I guess, for not taking all 4 and having Lamar, who is the number 1 on pretty much the year, have a week off. But come on, could you just... I mean, Randy did a good job. She had well over-predicted. 150 is going to win you most weeks. Winston was the quarterback 5, so one of the few players you allowed to score that you didn't have. Kupp was the wide receiver 2, obviously next to your wide receiver 1. And she put up a good fight. I mean, even like, you got Houston, 10 points from your defense isn't bad. Didn't know it wasn't in the top 5. That's a kicker. Detroit's defense was number 4. I mean, Randy's going to win most weeks, but... just not this one. On the plus side, Randy, you did hang on to your number 2 spot, and you pretty much made us all cement that we just can't cheer for Jules and Lara here and so I'm sorry. You got to save some points for the rest of us. In a much more modest and appropriate reaction to scoring, Kelsey had a phenomenal week. You needed the win, too. This puts you in a top 5, which is fantastic. 162 is a great score. Now, you didn't necessarily have to go off to do it either. Now, granted, there wasn't too many teams left in the top 5 in any category. Those were all spoken for. But your wide receivers were great. Nakua had a great game, and Higgins was our wide receiver 3. Your running backs didn't necessarily need to do too much, but just everybody put some points up for you, which certainly helped. Jackie, unfortunately, 120, like I said, over-predicted. A lot of weak sets going to make you win. You did have some people dent the board here. You did have Stafford, who was our quarterback 4. LA was a top 5 scoring defense, but you were really let down by your running backs. You needed them to come out, and they've kind of been your bread and butter for a while. And A.J. Brown really hasn't had his breakout game yet. The bench was fairly even, although Kelsey, you did leave some points on the bench, but you certainly didn't need it. So for you, a top 5, that's really key right now. We're going to finally get to the standings. You want to keep that run on the go. Jackie, you're by no means, it's only a game out, and you're a team that has scored a fair bit of points, so you got that going for you. But with a few weeks left, you really need to put one together for week 12. By far the closest matchup. Anything within 5 points is going to be tight, and you're going to kick yourself when we get to the bench. 4.38, I believe, was the differential. Now, actually, if we look at Fourth and Conquer first, you had one of the only quarterbacks who we allowed to score on the board here. Burrow was the quarterback 2. But unfortunately, aside from your top 5 tight end in Disley, which was a great pickup, you had Minnesota's defense, which was number 3. Your kicker was the only number 1 that was allowed to be given to another team. So all of these things you would think would add up to success, but unfortunately, you just needed a bit more from your receivers. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, actually, if you look at the number of yards Dallas threw versus the number of yards he had, I don't think he can do a whole lot more, but you needed McLovin to do something. You needed Wilson to go, because if you actually look, Tua would have taken it home for you. Now, on the other side, okay, there wasn't exactly like the 3-headed Cerberus here, didn't have things on the go. And you'd think if I went down here, like, maybe you should have thought about your running backs, but actually it's your running backs that save you. You had Hall and Jacobs, which were the running backs 3 and 5 on the week, respectively. Digger, the kicker, gotta love it, not just for the name, but the fact that he was a top 4 kicker. And that was just enough to squeak through. So certainly you could have used a little more support, but let's not be too picky here. And also, let's not be too picky for either one of you. This was just a top matchup. This is 3 now versus 4. You're both still doing quite well, obviously. And if you can hang on, who knows? Maybe you get your rematch in a couple weeks in the playoffs. speaking of playoffs, I have to shut my mouth because I think last week I said, Pamela, if you want to get on a run, you got to go now. And she apparently listened. 128, I thought that would have been good enough to win, but Pamela says, nah. And actually on Thursday, I got a kick in the crotch with Barkley going off. And he didn't end up hanging on to the top spot, but he had it until the Monday nighter. He ended up being our running back too. But the real kick in the crotch is the fact that I drafted Richardson in this league, dropped him because he wasn't playing well, and he got benched. And then you had to go pick him up and actually stick it to me with him, didn't you, Pamela? So I guess well played there. I can't be too mad at you. It wasn't exactly a slouch. I did have Montgomery, who was the running back 4. I had the second best scoring defense. Achan was just outside, but I needed a bit more performance. Now, if we look at my bench, I did have Dobbins. Had I put in Dobbins over Hunt, I would have taken this one down. And Pamela was riding commando with not a whole lot in the basement this week. So that one's on me, but also on you, Pamela. Well done. You needed to win, you got to win, and so you're certainly not out of it yet. Team Kickass, you can't blame karma on this week because, frankly, the only team you would have beat is the team that I think you played, so well done there. This one was squeaked out to the bitter end. It did actually come down to the last game. Raph, you were 58% to win on Monday. You had Nico and CJ, and they had a 20, well, we'll say 27. I think it was 26-9-8, but who's counting other than me? But if we look down here, CJ did not have a great game. Nico did not have a good game. The game script turned on you. Houston went up big, and Mixon just went off and stole all of your touchdowns, so you know who to blame on that one. You also had an offer in terms of Kraft. Had you taken a look at your bench here, Smith and Jigba would have helped you, Williams would have helped you, and like a broomstick would have been a better option at tight end. I'm not mocking you. I had him in another league. Can't make fun. But Team Kickass, you held on here. Now, you didn't have a whole lot scoring into the top 5. You did have Bauer, who was your backup tight end and actually was one of the best tight ends. I think he's going to end up on my year-end list as well. He was the tight end 3 on the week. You also made all the right decisions here because you didn't have a whole lot, although I guess technically Cooper might have been a better upgrade than Samuel, but you know what? You got by the week, and that's all that matters. Raph, you put us in an odd spot here because this is actually your 3rd week where you are our lowest score, which means this is a dead week. You only owe the 2 rounds. But now of the 4 people who owe drinks, all 4 owe 2. Some have already paid, and 3 of those 4 are dead. So we're really getting down to the fact that we need a new low this week. If Jackie is the low this week, I hope she isn't, that would be the last of the dead weeks, and then they'd all be wrapped up. But I'm going to say, Jackie, don't be the last one, which means, remember, Raph, Pamela, and myself, we don't count. Just saying it now so you can't complain later. Let's see what that brings going to week 12 in terms of our low and our drink buying score. So as I said, I'm pretty sure Jules and Laura have locked up the number 1 spot, which means they're finishing in the green on that one. There is a small financial benefit for finishing first in the regular season. But yes, Raph, there are still playoffs. You know the rules. We do have that tie for second, but not for long. You'll see why in a second. We've got a nice clean 6 wins here, and then everybody else, it's nice and messy. We've got a 3-way tie for the last 2 playoff spots with Jackie just on the outside. And then we've got our 2 teams here that are 2 games away from the playoffs. So with only a couple left, I don't know that you can actually lose from here on out, especially with some of the point values, so you're going to have to go on your run. Jackie, Raph, obviously it is not over, but if I were you, you really do need that win. So, and frankly, I do too. So let's go to week 12. I think the interesting part from week 12 is you're looking at a bunch of teams that are in the playoffs, even in my case, just barely, with a bunch of teams that are out of the playoffs. So if I'm one of the 7, 8, 9, 10 teams, that's actually what you want, because realistically, at least you're playing one of the teams that you do need to drop so you can jump in there. The only real epic matchup we have of 2 playoff contenders right now is our tie for second. So we get to see which team is going to earn the number 2 spot right now, even though they might not keep it. But let's be honest, only a couple weeks left. This could be deciding a 2. And remember the difference between a 2 and a 3. 2 seed, you get the bye in the first round of the playoffs, Raph. The playoffs. They matter. Said it once, I've said it twice, I've probably said it 20 times in the last few weeks. Every week is going to matter, and especially this one. I think we could see if losses go the way that some people are hoping they won't, some teams might get knocked out of the playoffs, or, like I said, those teams at the bottom could all flip the script, pretty much make everybody tied and just an open scramble for the last couple weeks. Meanwhile, we have a couple people paying it to the top end of the bracket, and they're trying to cement their way to the finals with the smoothest way possible. So, as I said, every point's going to matter, every game's going to matter, so let's get on it. tons and tons of bye weeks this week. There's 6 of them. Pay attention to it. It's our last normal week, then we get a Thanksgiving, and then it's back to 6. Pandemonium for the last 3 weeks, so can't wait to get started. Best of luck in week 12.